It is the 30th anniversary of the Halloween blizzard. It remains the single largest snowstorm in the Twin Cities, dropping more than 27 inches across the metro. In about 12 minutes, we are going to play WCCO's newscast from November 1st, the day when most of the snow actually fell. But before we do that, we want to bring you a conversation between Chris Schaefer and NPR's Paul Huttner, who was then a meteorologist at WCCO.
Let's start off with what some people probably thought with the Halloween blizzard was the scariest thing, but I thought it was the coolest thing, your mustache.
91 was not far past the 80s. So the stash was still a thing back then. And
I'm a fan of the stash.
I guess I was rocking it still in 91.
That's great. I wish you would bring it back someday. Don't tell your wife I said that. I'm sure she's glad it's in the rearview mirror. But let's talk a little bit. I mean, we have to go back in time because oftentimes when we talk about this blizzard, we're thinking of today's technology, but that wasn't the case in 1991. So, Paul, when you were looking at the models leading up to this, were you just like, there's no way we're not going to see that kind of a storm?
That was exactly it, because we knew a storm was coming. And the day before, many of us were standing in the Weather Center. Mike Fairborn, Bill Anderson. We're looking at these computer forecasts that are printing out over 2 inches of liquid, which, as you know, we're saying that's going to be more than 20 inches of snow. That's not really going to happen, right? And I think we put out a forecast somewhere around a foot the day before. We did not know that it was going to end up being 28.4 inches of snow for that blizzard.
Well, I think back, Paul, to the more recent storm that took down the Metrodome in 2010 there. And I remember, because you don't want to scare viewers, of course, and just even the mention of snow around Halloween will scare somebody. But I remember with that December storm system going on the air and saying, I'm not kidding. It looks like we could easily see 1.5 feet of snowfall. And it did happen. But I mean, that must have been really hard for people to digest because it's Halloween. People are talking about trick-or-treating and you're telling them we could see 1 foot of snow.
Yeah, and it was incredible because, of course, it started during Halloween day and evening. So there were trick-or-treaters out in the snow. By the time I woke up the following morning around 3 a.m. to get into CCO, there was already more than 1 foot of snow on the ground. And I think there was 15 inches by the time I did my first update that morning at about 6 or 7 a.m.
A lot of people, I suppose as time goes on, they tend to think all 28 inches fell on Halloween night, but the bulk of it did actually fall overnight and on November 1st. And you're talking so early in the season. I don't even know if people had all their boats out of the water, the docks taken in. It was a shock.
Yeah, it came fast and it was a shock. And really the height of the storm was that morning of November 1st. Between the time we started our broadcast around 6 or 7 a.m. and noon that day, that's when we just started ticking off the inches, 15, 16.8. We're going to break the record. It's 21. Pretty soon we had 20, then we had 21. I was on with Jim Matthews from the National Weather Service when we broke that record. And it kept snowing on and off throughout that day. We got another burst that night, and we ended up with 28.4 inches by the time it was done.
And you're talking about a time where there were still plenty of rear-wheel drive cars on the roads and just a very difficult thing for folks to handle.
Yeah, look, Chris, it was incredible because I remember being on with the State Patrol. He was saying that most all of the ramps were blown shut in the Twin Cities, right in the Twin Cities. He basically said, we're recommending no travel, even in the heart of the metro. The entire city of Minneapolis-St. Paul was basically shut down that morning. Think about that. That rarely, if ever, happens. There was a cross-country skier down the middle of the Nicollet Mall that we had live on TV that morning. That gives you an idea of just how crazy the snow was.
Well, and I was looking up some of the numbers, how not only did it snow that much, but we had 23 inches of snow on the ground through November 5th. So it wasn't like it melted the next day like it might do in Colorado or Rapid City, South Dakota, but it was with us for a while.
It was. And here's an interesting thing, because it was warm before the storm and the ground was so warm, the first few inches melted and then froze underneath the rest of the snow that fell on top of it. We had about 1 inch or 2 of ice on the freeways for what seemed like weeks after that storm. It was like driving on a rutted dirt road down I-394 for about 2 weeks after that storm. They could not get it off the freeways.
And what would you say, because, to this day, as a meteorologist, we tend to get smiles and maybe even hugs on beautiful days, and we get the waving fit. Were people upset, or would you say the perception was more, I survived the Halloween blizzard?
Yeah, I think it was shock at first because this came so fast and so hard and just kept snowing. And when we found out it was the biggest snowstorm in Twin Cities history, I think that was a big shock to people. And, as a meteorologist, Chris, this, you always want to work the big storm, right? And as I sat there that morning, I knew it was huge. I had no idea that this would stand as the biggest snowstorm in Twin Cities history as I sit here 30 years later.
I think that's the thing that jumps out at me too, Paul, is 30 years have passed. You think somewhere along the line, and not just early in the season like this one was, but like a tournament storm in March or January has become such a snowy month that we would eclipse that then, but we haven't in 30 years.
And here's the other thing. This storm was 28 inches. Number 2 is 21 inches. So this was 7 inches more than the second place biggest snowstorm. In weather records, that's a huge difference. That's like an extra snowstorm on top of 3 snowstorms already. So that gives you an idea of just how off the charts the magnitude of this storm was. It's a singular weather event in Minnesota history, and the Minnesota DNR ranks it among the top 3 weather events in Minnesota weather history. And the other 2 are the Armistice Day blizzard and the Dust Bowl. So this is the only one that happened during most of our lifetimes.
Gosh, that's just unbelievable to think about it. And I think back to people from a pedestrian standpoint. Yes, eventually all of that snow did melt by mid-November. And then remind people what happened around Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we had another snow that year, and that was the all-time snowiest November on record for Minnesota. It was just a crazy year. And of course, that was the year of the World Series. There was a lot of big news events going on that year, and the Halloween megastorm was certainly one of the top that we saw that year.
Yeah, and that snow that fell right after Thanksgiving stayed with us all winter. We never saw our grass again until March. Paul, was there clearly you did such a good job of covering the storm for WCCO viewers, but was there a personal story, perhaps something that you went through? Did you end up in the ditch or something that you could relate?
Well, it was interesting because when I woke up, there was a foot of snow in my driveway. I had to back down my driveway 3 times in the same ruts to get out. And then once I started going forward, I did not stop. I was throwing up rooster tails in a foot of snow on I-394. And I remember this moment. After about my first or second update, John Lansing, who was one of the news managers, he's now the president of NPR, came in those clunky Sorel snow boots and a parka and said, "Paul, I want you to turn this into the Weather Channel. I want you to go on the air and stay on the air as long as you can." And I think my response was one word: cool.
Yeah, that is kind of in our blood, isn't it? Where you're
That's
like,
it.
let's do this. And I always tell people too, with even if it's a blizzard or something, we know they're coming generally days out. People, you can prep them for it more than say a tornado that can spring up on somebody like this. So yeah, I've enjoyed covering snowstorms, I guess, more than the tornadoes. They're not as devastating, and people tend to look back and smile at getting through the big winter storm versus tornadoes. You usually see sorrow in people's eyes.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a great memory for a lot of Minnesotans, right? Snowstorms affect a lot more people and cover a lot more area than tornadoes do. And everybody, likes to either make fun of the Halloween blizzard or talk about their memory. Either way, this is one of the biggest weather events in Minnesota history. So it's there on the books, and it's there in a lot of people's minds.
Welcome back. We're going to play some of our coverage from the Halloween blizzard. Many people, even those working at WCCO, were not able to get into work that day because of the weather. But it didn't stop Esme Murphy from bringing us live coverage in St. Paul.
As for traffic here in St. Paul, well, it's at a virtual standstill in many parts of the city. A lot of cars are not on the roads. We've been driving around St. Paul for some time this morning. Downtown St. Paul, not a lot of cars out. However, Interstate 94 is actually in pretty good shape. We found driving there pretty easy. As for the side streets, that's where you have the real problems. Tremendous accumulations there. People trying to dig out and having all kinds of problems. As we drove around, we saw a lot of snow blowers out. There are numerous reports of snow blowing accidents in addition to that cardiac arrest that we told you about. People apparently trying to reach in and unplug their snow blowers and getting their hands caught. So be careful, because ambulance time here in St. Paul is 2 to 3 times longer than normal. Now, as for what people here in St. Paul think of this record snowfall, well, we just went around this morning and we asked them.
Oh, this is terrible. I can't believe it.
How many times have you been out shoveling so far?
3 times last night and then twice already today.
I'm trying to get my shovel so I can help them out. But it's kind of like really like iced in there. So this might be a while.
I started like making angels in the snow, and I like shoveling sometimes. And I like pulling my sword around and making forts.
How about not having to go to school?
Yeah, it's fun.
Somehow children making what seems like a nightmare to many adults in the metro area, something of a fantasy land, especially when they don't have to go to school. Now, a snow emergency is in effect for St. Paul starting at 9 o'clock. They will start plowing one side of the north-south streets. That will continue tomorrow. They'll plow the other side of the north-south streets and then the east-west streets. So the plans for the big dig out are underway here in St. Paul, although, Cindy, I have to tell you, it is still snowing here.
You know, as you've been on the air, it looks like there have been quite a number of cars that have gone by, and also sounds like they've already salted the streets because you can hear the slush. Is that not true maybe in St. Paul? They've already gotten out with the salt trucks?
Absolutely, they really have. One thing I can say, though, is looking around, definitely downtown St. Paul is in much better shape than any place in the metro area that I've seen. I drove around Minneapolis this morning as well as St. Paul, and I have to say downtown St. Paul really is in the best shape of all.
Yeah, you can just tell by watching you with all the traffic. It's the most traffic we've seen all morning is what's going on behind you right now. Thanks, Esme Murphy, live in downtown St. Paul. Well, many people will say that so much snow burst the Halloween bubble, but that was really the case this morning at the downtown Minneapolis Athletic Club. The heavy snow caused the collapse of the dome at the Greenway Athletic Club. The dome wasn't even a year old, and it covered 4 tennis courts. Fortunately, there aren't any big rips in the dome cover, and Greenway officials say they might have it back up already by Monday. Meanwhile, crews are working at another dome, the big dome, the Metrodome, trying to keep that from collapsing. They're sweeping and shoveling snow off the dome roof in an effort to avoid another collapse. You may remember that the top dropped off the dome on 2 previous occasions when snow proved too heavy for it. Another dome I saw when I was coming in on 394, one of the car dealerships on the north side of 394, that dome had collapsed. Well, how do you get out from underneath 20 inches of snow? Daryl Savage is up on our roof. And Daryl, you've been among the people out in Minneapolis. How's the dig out going?
Well, one of the first things you have to do to dig out is to make sure the snow stops falling. Unfortunately, Cindy, as you can see, the snow continues to fall. We're up on CCO's roof right above the Nicollet Mall, which is usually bustling with traffic, bus traffic and taxi traffic. Very little down there this morning. Of course, the first snow of the year is often exciting, exhilarating. Well, there is no fun today because it seems like everyone realizes how serious this is. We've been out and about in Minneapolis, and this has been quite a mess. Now, in Minneapolis and Hennepin County alone, more than 100 pieces of snow removal have been out throughout the city, clearing snow throughout the night. But there are still very major problems. MTC reports that at least 45 of its buses have gotten stuck, leaving many passengers no recourse but to get off and walk home. Many cars that were parked in open lots will stay parked for quite a while. Apartment maintenance man Norman Varberg says this snow removal job will be the worst he has ever had. How long are you going to be out here today?
Probably all day. And half of last night.
Snow has been a mixed blessing for Peggy Daniel. Her car is stuck in a parking lot, but she is an in-home nurse and is trapped with her patient who has cystic fibrosis. If she hadn't been stuck here overnight, her patient may not have gotten care.
She couldn't get anybody in here. Didn't do her inhalation therapy or anything. So it's a good thing, yeah, that I was stuck with her.
But if it's true that every cloud has a silver lining, this is seventh heaven for cross-country skiers. Oftentimes we'll do stories talking about how much fun people are having, but it's a little bit different today because you get the feeling even the people who can get out don't want to risk it because they know the danger. So, Cindy, it's quite a somber feeling out here for people who have been able to get downtown.
You're right, and I think those of us that got down to the station today, it's only because of the helpfulness of the neighbors. I know that was the case for us. We had some neighbors come out and literally push us up a hill. Otherwise, nobody's getting out and about. It's really tough.
A photographer had to pick me up because my car is still stuck in the parking lot.
Well, you're like most of us. Daryl Savage on the roof of our CCO building here in downtown Minneapolis where the city is closed.
Up next, we'll bring you the story of two newlyweds who spent the Halloween blizzard at an MSP airport bar. The Halloween blizzard stranded thousands of people at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. In our last segment, we'll bring you an interview with a newlywed couple who were just trying to get home.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Hilger with another WCCO TV update on the mega storm. The headline emerging this morning is that we've totaled more than 27 inches of snow, and that high winds today are once again creating blizzard conditions. We're trying to get the best grasp we can on what you can expect in travel today, and we're also trying to find out what's open if you do decide to travel. For starters, here's what MTC is telling us. Buses are getting around in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but you probably shouldn't expect a bus if you live out in the suburbs. If you have a car parked on the streets designated as snow emergency routes in Minneapolis and St. Paul, you best get them out. Minneapolis says they have already been tagging and towing. St. Paul tells us they're giving folks till tonight to get their cars dug out before they get towed. As far as road conditions, we have a few specific pieces of information to pass along. Interstate 90 in southern Minnesota is closed. No travel is advised. Stalled cars and trucks are blocking several county roads near St. Cloud. No travel is advised there either. And as of 7:30 this morning, Carver County has pulled its snowplow crews due to blowing and drifting snow. Hennepin and Ramsey counties do have plow crews out on the roads right now. The Metro State Patrol says it has lost track of its accident count. 12 hours ago, it had logged more than 700 accidents on Metro roads. As for air travel, we have reporter Sylvia Gambardella standing by at Twin Cities International to give us an update on how this storm has affected flights in and out of the Twin Cities. How are things going out there, Sylvia?
You know, amazingly, Cindy, there are a lot of tired folks here. That's not the amazing part, but it's incredibly orderly. In fact, we were surprised when we arrived today to see that patience was the key word, and people were taking a lot of things in stride. There are some cancellations, mostly with the incoming flights, but most outbound seem to be on time. The best bet is to call your airline if you are flying out today or picking someone up here. Now, we arrived here at about 7:15 to see a lot of stranded passengers sleeping on the floor. You see one there, and making the most of the situation. This is on the upper concourse. Many of them were even just waking up. In fact, the longest line we happened to see was at the Burger King. Obviously, people going for breakfast, so they knew what their priorities were. As I said, there was a lot of patience on the part of the passengers, and some of those here who were taking it all in stride happen to be Dave and Carol Casati, who are on their way to Des Moines. Where were you coming from?
Miami by way of the Bahamas.
What were you doing in the Bahamas?
We were on our honeymoon.
I bet you're thrilled to be back here. How long were you waiting last night?
We got in here about 8 o'clock, so...
It wasn't too bad. How did you spend the evening?
We spent the evening eating, and we basically lounged out on the nice concrete floor and...
At the bar.
Yeah.
Hit the bar. How are the people here last night?
In pretty good spirits.
Yeah, pretty patient.
Everybody was frustrated at first, but
There's nothing we could do about it, so...
Any hope of getting out of here this morning?
It's starting to look pretty good. We haven't heard a whole lot. So far, our flight is still scheduled on time, and that's at 11:30, so we'll have to wait and see for that. But...
Okay, good luck. I bet you're thrilled. We want to get the full effect here to see that they are wearing sneakers and shorts. Obviously, your mind's still on your honeymoon in the Bahamas and the warm weather.
Yes, very much
definitely.
so.
Good luck getting home. Okay, Cindy, as you see, some people are taking very good humor today. And, of course, if you are waiting for somebody at the airport, please call the airline. Same goes for if you're planning to get out of the airport. There are some cancellations, and you wouldn't want to get stuck here.
Are other airports having this problem in the other parts of the Midwest?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's where most of the cancellations are. It's the flights coming in from most of the Midwest cities.
Boy, it's a mess everywhere.
That's right, absolutely.
Nice job, Sylvia. Thank you very much. Well, if you're looking for your morning newspaper, we have late word that the Star Tribune will not, I repeat, will not be delivered to most locations today. The paper says it is unable to get its suburban depots open for the carriers to pick up papers. The Pioneer Press says it's still trying to get most of its papers out. The Star Tribune asked us to pass along, please don't call them, they'll credit your accounts. They are doing their best to get papers out, but if you live in the suburbs, you probably will not get a paper today if you have the Star Tribune subscription. For an update now on our current weather conditions, we'll go to Paul Huttner, who is in our storm center. Paul, we thought yesterday was bad. Today looks just as bad.
Yeah, it really is, Cindy. You know, you gave some of those road conditions that we saw. I know the normally smooth and brand new I-394 driving into the Twin Cities with that ice compacted. It's a little more actually like driving on a dirt road in the country in the middle of August. One more piece of road information which just came to my attention. Highway 169 between Belle Plaine and Le Sueur, just southwest of the Twin Cities, is also closed. The National Weather Service is still using the term mega storm to describe this storm. 28.7 inches in the Twin Cities. That's an all-time single storm snowfall record for us. Duluth did the same thing, and they even beat us, 31.6 inches. The main story today is not so much falling snow, but it is the high winds that are causing blowing snow. Reduced visibilities to near zero at times in western Minnesota, and falling temperatures creating wind chills down in the 30 below zero range. Let's take a look at the radar right now. I'll show you what we have going on. Just a little bit of light snow falling right now, and a lot of this that we're picking up may be blowing snow. If we can go to Doppler radar, there it is. You'll see that the area mainly runs from the Twin Cities up north to near Lake Mille Lacs. This whole area is moving to the south-southeast. A lot of this may in fact be blowing snow. We do have some advisories up. A blizzard warning does it continue this afternoon for almost all of Minnesota. It includes the Twin Cities, St. Cloud, Rochester, Brainerd, Alexandria, and Redwood Falls. Also winter storm warnings for the northeastern part of the state. We do have some advisories for western Wisconsin and parts of the Dakotas and Iowa. Temperatures at this hour are beginning to fall off. Still some 20s off into eastern Wisconsin. Generally teens, though, across Minnesota at this hour. Still some single digits back to the west, 7 above at Jamestown and at Watertown. Right now, we do have some wind gusts here that are gusting over 30 miles an hour, and that's the main problem. This whole area here with wind gusts over 30 miles an hour, that's what's causing the blowing and drifting snow. Those winds are from the northwest, and they should continue from that direction and at that intensity for the rest of today and tonight. With those winds and those falling temperatures, the wind chill is the main story. And if you were to be out and stuck out in this kind of weather, it is dangerously cold. Wind chills in the 30 below zero category from just west of the Twin Cities all the way back into the Dakotas. And that situation I am not expecting to improve anytime soon. It looks like we will see a bit of a respite here, but it will be a gradual one during the next 24 hours. And our Twin Cities forecast for this afternoon calls for that blizzard warning. We'll see some light snow and flurries, but the main story, blowing snow and falling temperatures. Highs today in the teens, falling temperatures, northwest winds 25 to 45 miles an hour. For tonight, continued windy, some blowing snow, a few flurries as well. 5 above for the overnight low. Wind chill should be down in the 20 to 40 below range tonight with those northwest winds. Then for tomorrow, mostly cloudy, some lingering flurries. The good news, though, less windy. Our high tomorrow only about 17, but those winds will diminish. That should help reduce the blowing snow. And Cindy, I think conditions will improve, especially tomorrow throughout all of Minnesota.
We have much more on the Halloween blizzard up on WCCO.com. You're watching CBSN Minnesota.